Don't eat that. The words sliced through the elegant dining room, where billionaire widower Ethan Royce is celebrating his engagement. His perfect fiancée Celeste just added a special garnish to his plate, but Lena, a quiet waitress filling in for the night, saw what it really was. A tiny clear capsule. The same kind that can mimic the symptoms that plagued Ethan's first wife, right before her fatal car accident. Now, with the billionaire's fork frozen just inches from his mouth, the entire world hangs on his next move. Does he trust the woman he's about to marry? Or the terrified stranger who just shattered his life to save it? The tired whine of the city bus brakes was the soundtrack to Lena Grace's life. At 19, she felt older than the cracked vinyl seats she sat on, staring out at the rain-slicked streets of a world that felt a million miles away from the one she was heading toward. She clutched her worn backpack, the straps frayed from years of use. Inside was her work uniform, a simple black blouse and pants pressed and clean, and a textbook on circuit theory she hadn't opened in months. The technical scholarship she'd won, her one shining chance to escape this life, was a ghost that haunted her, a dream she'd had to set aside when her grandmother's medical bills became a tidal wave. Now her world was the clatter of plates at the diner, the smell of burnt coffee, and the weary bus ride home. Tonight was different. A call had come into the diner. The personal chef at the Royce estate had an injury, and they needed an extra, steady hand for a private family dinner. The pay was more than she made in 3 regular shifts. It was a lifeline. An hour later, the bus dropped her at the end of a long private road. As Lena walked toward the towering gates of Ethan Royce's estate, she felt like she was stepping into another dimension. The house wasn't just a house, it was a statement. Sleek, modern lines of glass and steel were softened by warm, traditional wood, all of it nestled in the foggy San Francisco hills. The place was a fortress, but a beautiful one. She was met at the door by Gerald, the family chef, a man in his late 50s with kind eyes and an arm in a sling. His face was etched with a gentle worry that seemed permanent. "Lena, thank you for coming on such short notice," he said, his voice a low, comforting rumble. He led her through a hallway that felt more like an art gallery, and into a breathtaking kitchen. "It's a simple dinner party. Mr. Royce is celebrating his engagement. Just help with the plating and serving. Stay quiet, stay in the background." He paused, looking at her with a knowing intensity. "And a word of advice. Miss Hart, the fiancé, likes things done a certain way. Just smile and nod. Mr. Royce, he deserves a peaceful night." The unspoken message was clear. Celeste was difficult, and Ethan was fragile. Later, in the grand dining room, Lena understood. The room was aglow with the warm light of a modern chandelier, reflecting off a polished mahogany table. It was a picture of perfect domestic bliss, but Lena, an expert in reading the spaces between words, felt the chill. Ethan Royce sat at the head of the table. He was handsome, but a deep sadness clung to him like a shadow. He smiled at his fiancée Celeste Hart, but the smile never quite reached his eyes. Celeste was everything he wasn't: vibrant, polished, and radiating a flawless charm that felt rehearsed. And at Ethan's side, his 9-year-old daughter Ava was a silent little island. She moved peas around her plate with her fork, her expression unreadable, her presence a quiet protest against the forced joy of the evening. Lena moved like a phantom, refilling water glasses, clearing empty bread plates. She was invisible, just as she was trained to be. She watched Celeste, who commanded the room with practiced ease. She would touch Ethan's arm at the perfect moment, laugh at a story with just the right amount of warmth. It was a performance, and a masterful one. Then Celeste stood, her crystal glass raised. "A toast," she said, her voice like honey, "to new beginnings, which are the most beautiful kind, to family, and to a future filled with happiness." As everyone sipped their champagne, Celeste glided over to Ethan's side. "Your salmon needs a little something extra, darling," she murmured, her voice intimate and low. She reached into a small, elegant silver box she'd had near her plate, ostensibly filled with finishing salts or rare herbs. With a graceful flick of her wrist, she sprinkled something over his food. But Lena's eyes, trained to notice the smallest details, a customer's empty glass, a dropped napkin, saw what no one else did. It wasn't a pinch of herbs. For a split second, caught in the light of the chandelier, she saw the glint of something smooth and manufactured. A tiny clear capsule, dropped from the fold of Celeste's palm onto the perfectly grilled fish. Lena's heart stopped. She knew that capsule. She had seen its twin in a bottle her grandmother's doctor had prescribed after a fall. A fast-acting synthetic sedative to be used only for extreme anxiety. It was potent, designed to be untraceable in standard tests, and it made you drowsy and confused. Her mind screamed. Everything around her, the expensive art, the polite conversation, the illusion of a happy family, faded to a low hum. All she could see was Ethan, his fork poised, lifting the piece of salmon to his mouth. He was smiling that tired, sad smile at the woman who had just drugged him. Every instinct Lena had ever learned screamed at her. Stay quiet. Don't make a scene. This is not your place. You'll be fired. You need this money. But then she looked at Ava, the sad little girl who had already lost her mother. She couldn't. A force she didn't know she possessed surged through her. Her voice, hoarse from disuse, tore through the elegant silence. Don't eat that. The words, raw and desperate, echoed in the vast room. Time froze. Ethan's fork stopped inches from his lips. Celeste's head snapped toward Lena, her perfect mask of charm cracking to reveal a flash of pure cold fury. Ava's head shot up, her wide, observant eyes fixed not on her father, but on the terrified waitress. The silence that followed was a physical weight pressing down on all of them. Lena stood trembling, her hands clammy. The entire world's attention suddenly focused on her. The invisible girl had just made herself seen, and she knew her life would never be the same. The cold silence of the dining room was shattered by the scrape of Celeste's chair. The aftermath was immediate and brutal. Lena was not fired. She was escorted, her arm held in a firm but not painful grip by a member of Ethan's security team, into the sterile quiet of his study. Books lined the walls from floor to ceiling, surrounding a desk that held more technology than a small company. Celeste followed them in, closing the door with a decisive click. She leaned against the desk, her arms crossed, her face a perfect portrait of concerned, heartbroken pity. She was no longer furious, she was a victim. Ethan, darling, she began, her voice soft and reasonable. I know you have a good heart. You want to see the best in people. But look at her. She's clearly unstable. Celeste gestured toward Lena, who stood frozen by the door. This is a cry for help. Or worse, a shakedown. People like this see your name, they see this house, and they think they can get a payout. We should call someone, get her some professional help, but we cannot entertain these fantasies. Ethan sat behind his massive desk, his face a stone mask. He looked from the poised, elegant woman he was about to marry to the terrified young waitress in a simple uniform who looked like she was about to faint. His analytical mind, the mind that had built a tech empire, warred with a gut feeling he couldn't shake. Lena's fear had been primal, genuine. Celeste's concern felt like a performance. He was about to speak when a memory, sharp and unwelcome, pierced through his confusion. It was Anna, his late wife, a few weeks before the accident. They were in the kitchen, planning a trip to Italy. She had suddenly grabbed the counter, her face pale. I'm so dizzy, Ethan, she had said, her voice weak. It keeps happening. I feel like I'm walking through fog. He had dismissed it as stress, told her she was working too hard. The guilt was a fresh stab in his heart. A small voice from the doorway cut through his thoughts. She's not lying. Everyone turned. Ava stood there, a tiny defiant figure in her party dress. She had followed them, a silent sentinel. Celeste's posture stiffened. She forced a sweet smile. Ava, sweetie, you must have misunderstood. The waitress is just confused. Ava ignored her completely, her gaze locked on her father. My orange juice tasted funny a while ago, she said, her voice small but steady. After I drank it, I got really sleepy and my head hurt. When it was all gone, I found one of those little plastic things in the bottom of my glass. I poured it out. Her chin trembled for a second. I didn't tell you because you looked so happy with her. I didn't want to make you sad again. The confession of a 9-year-old child, trying to protect her grieving father's happiness, shattered Ethan's composure. It wasn't just an accusation. It was an indictment of his own blindness. He had been so lost in his own grief, so desperate to find a new beginning, that he hadn't seen what was right in front of him. He stood up, his decision swift and absolute. The analytical mind was back in control, fueled by a terrifying new purpose. The dinner is over, he said, his voice devoid of all warmth. He looked at the security guard. Secure this plate. Everything on it. Nothing gets touched. We're sending it to a private lab first thing in the morning. Celeste's eyes widened, a flicker of panic in their depths. Ethan, this is absurd. You're taking the word of a troubled girl and a child's fantasy over me. He didn't even look at her. His eyes were on Lena. You will stay here at the estate tonight, he commanded. It was not a question. He motioned to his head of security. Put her in the north guest suite. See that she is comfortable. And see that she is safe. He paused, his gaze finally shifting to Celeste, and for the first time she saw a glimmer of ice in his eyes. We all need to be safe. Lena was led away, her mind reeling. She was escorted to a guest room larger and more luxurious than her entire apartment. As the door closed behind her, leaving her in an opulent, silent prison, she sank onto the bed. She had done the right thing, but she had no idea if she had just saved a man's life or completely destroyed her own. It's just heartbreaking to see a good man like Ethan manipulated like this, isn't it? You can feel his whole world shaking. We're curious, where are you all watching from tonight? Let us know in the comments and tell us what you think Ethan should do next. A tense, cold war began within the walls of the Royce estate. On the surface, life continued. Celeste played the part of the deeply wounded but forgiving fiancée, her every action a display of patient suffering. Ethan moved through their shared spaces with a polite, detached calm that was more unnerving than any open anger. He was a man running a diagnostic on his own life, searching for a virus that had been hiding in plain sight. His nights were now sleepless, spent in the blue glow of his computer screens. He wasn't just a billionaire. He was a master of data. He started with Celeste's public profile, the society pages, the charity events, the flawless resume. Then he started digging deeper. He hired a private investigator, a discreet former intelligence agent, to pull on the threads. The first inconsistencies were small. A summer internship she'd listed at a prestigious firm in London had no record of her. The university she claimed to have attended for a semester abroad couldn't find her in their system. They were small lies, the kind people tell to buff a resume, but they formed a pattern. He found her financials next. For years, she had been drowning in debt from a failed startup. Then, 6 months before she met him, it was all gone. A single, anonymous wire transfer had wiped her slate clean. While Ethan was lost in a world of encrypted files and background checks, Lena was navigating a different kind of quiet tension. She was confined to the guest wing, a comfortable but lonely prison. The staff treated her with a mixture of fear and curiosity. But she wasn't entirely alone. Ava began seeking her out. The first time, she just appeared at Lena's door, holding her sketchbook. She didn't say anything, just sat in a large armchair and began to draw. Lena, understanding the girl's need for simple companionship, went on with her reading. An hour later, Ava got up and left, leaving a drawing on the table. It was a picture of two figures, one tall and one small, standing under a large, protective-looking tree. Their silent meetings became a ritual. One evening, Lena found a box of old electronics in a closet, remnants of one of Ethan's old projects. She started tinkering, her fingers remembering the familiar comfort of wires and circuit boards. Ava watched, fascinated. "What are you making?" she asked. "Just a little light box. You can draw on it and the picture will glow," Lena explained, her voice soft. It was the most they had ever spoken. "My mom liked electronics," Ava said quietly. "She said it was like solving a puzzle to make magic happen." Lena looked at the sad, wise little girl and felt a pang in her chest. "She sounds like she was very smart," Lena said. "She was," Ava whispered. "She would have seen it." About Celeste. That night, an encrypted email arrived on Ethan's phone. The lab results. His hands were steady as he opened the file. The report was clinical, precise, and damning. The sample from the salmon contained a high concentration of a sophisticated, non-commercial synthetic sedative. Its chemical signature was designed to mimic the effects of extreme fatigue, and to break down quickly in the bloodstream, making it nearly impossible to detect after a few hours. The report noted that prolonged low-dose exposure could lead to chronic dizziness, disorientation, and impaired motor skills. The words blurred in front of Ethan's eyes. Impaired motor skills. A car accident on a winding road. He made a call. Within the hour, his security team was installing a new surveillance system, one far more advanced than the estate's already formidable defenses. These cameras were tiny, silent, and fed into a closed, private network only he could access. He put them in his study, the kitchen, the living room, and, after a moment's hesitation, in the hallway outside Ava's room. The next afternoon, Lena was in the main pantry, looking for cocoa for her and Ava. As she reached for a tin on a high shelf, her fingers brushed against something that wasn't supposed to be there. It was a small, almost imperceptible bump on the underside of the wooden shelf. Her curiosity piqued, she grabbed a stool. Tucked away in the shadows, covered by a thin layer of dust, was a tiny black lens, no bigger than the head of a pin. It was expertly hidden behind a sack of flour. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't one of Ethan's new cameras. This was older, more settled. It had been watching this house for a long time. She carefully climbed down, her heart pounding. She knew with chilling certainty that this camera wasn't Ethan's. It was Celeste's. And a new terrifying thought emerged. A mysterious encrypted signal was being transmitted from inside this house, and not by Ethan. The trap wasn't just set for him. He was living inside it. Lena took the information about the hidden camera directly to Ethan. The discovery was the key that unlocked everything. His cybersecurity expert, a young genius Ethan had hired straight out of college, carefully removed the device. It was a high-end spy camera, powered by a long-life battery and transmitting a slow, encrypted drip of data. "This is an amateur hour," the tech expert, a man named Ben, said grimly. "The encryption is military grade. It's designed to look like background noise in the network traffic." Ben worked for 2 days straight, fueled by coffee and a burning sense of loyalty to Ethan. Finally, he broke through. "The signal is bouncing off servers in 3 different countries to hide its tracks," Ben explained, pointing to a complex map on his screen. "But the final destination, the money trail behind the server rental, leads back to a shell corporation. And that corporation is funded by Reeve Dynamics." The name landed in the room like a physical blow. Reeve Dynamics was Ethan's fiercest competitor, run by the notoriously ruthless Dominic Reeve, a man who believed innovation was something you bought or stole, never created. "There's more," Ben said, his face tight. "There's a secondary access point. Someone else has been logging in to view the feed from a local IP address." He typed a few commands and a name flashed on the screen: Harper Wells. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. Harper wasn't just a board member. He had been one of his first investors. He had been a friend. He had been a pallbearer at Anna's funeral. The betrayal was so deep, so intimate, it felt like a physical wound. The pieces of the puzzle began to slam into place with horrifying speed. While Ben traced the signal, Gerald, the chef, returned to the kitchen, his arm now in a more mobile sling. Ethan sat with him, explaining what they had found. Gerald's kind face hardened into a mask of cold fury. He stood up and walked to his personal recipe book. "I knew something was wrong," he muttered. "She was too interested. Too specific." He opened the book to a page with several notes scribbled in the margins in Celeste's elegant handwriting. "A few months ago, she came to me with this list of alternative herbs. Said she was getting into wellness, wanted to make special smoothies for you. I told her then this combination," he pointed to a list that included valerian root, kava, and other potent relaxants, "is a bad idea. I told her it could make a man drowsy, slow him down. She just smiled that perfect smile and said, 'He works too hard, Gerald. He needs to learn to rest.'" He had been unknowingly providing her with a cover story, a list of ingredients that could explain away any strange tastes in Ethan's food. That night, Ethan's private investigator sent him a final report. It was a deep dive into Celeste's failed tech startup. The company had been developing a predictive data algorithm, a primitive version of what would eventually become Ethan's neural